Alright, it's time for another Devil Fruit Down Low. As promised, we are gonna go and talk about Sabo. So who is Sabo? Well, Sabo is a member of the Revolutionary Army. The Revolutionary Army is a group dedicated to taking down the world government in one piece. Now they're not stupid. They know that, like, okay, if we take down the whole thing, then it's going to be complete and utter anarchy. We do need some form of law enforcement in the world. Just the basically they want to just take out the Tenryubito, the world nobles, the celestial dragons, whatever freaking names they all go by. They want to take them down because they see them as the highest form of corruption, and they really are. I learned some more dick facts about them, about, like, just facts about how the Tenryubito are dicks. I mentioned already in Boa's video that they are, that they, keep sex slaves, because that's what Boa and her sisters were. Now, they also have a variety of other slaves, and when they have this humongous mansion that most of them live in. There's only 2 out of the original 12 that don't live there. One is the Doflamingo family who left, and they settled in an area that is now Dressrosa, or near there anyway. And now, I'm sorry, it's not the Doflamingo family, it's the Don Quixote family. The current, most recent generation of that is Doflamingo, Don Quixote Doflamingo. So Doflamingo, he is a celestial dragon. He is a descendant of the world nobles, but he's so damn corrupt that, like, even the Tenryubito don't acknowledge him, and his family's kind of been disowned pretty much. So he turned to being like a criminal underground kingpin kind of guy, and he does have a devil fruit. And I'll get to talking about him. He's actually the first person that Luffy ever fought and went Gear 4th. He was the first person to ever have Luffy go Gear 4th to beat him. And then the other family that left was the Nefertari family. And the Nefertari family is actually pretty good friends with the Straw Hats, with Luffy and the gang, because they're friends with Princess Vivi, who is the current generation of the Nefertari family. And they basically left because they themselves saw how corrupt the other world nobles were becoming, and they said, screw this mess, we're out. And then they went off into the world and they settled in a deserty kingdom called Alabasta, and set up the capital royal city of Alubarna. And we have a whole bunch of stuff that goes on there. There's a whole big arc in the story that takes place there. So basically, Luffy has beaten the hell out of one celestial dragon, one world noble, and is very good friends with another one. So, well, technically he's beaten the hell out of 2 of them, because there's like one Tenryubito that's shown up, I think, like twice, and both times that he's shown up, he's gotten the shit kicked out of him just because he's such a dick. Well, they're all dicks, but anyway. Another thing about it is that, like, this huge mansion they live in, even when they're in this mansion, like, you look at how their outfits that look like a combination of, like, a hazmat suit and a freaking, like, kimono. Like, imagine, like, to use a Western reference, imagine the outfit that Sandy Cheeks from SpongeBob wears. You know, that kind of diving suit that Sandy wears to live in the underwater city of Bikini Bottom. Imagine that, but if, like, the suit itself was designed like a kimono. That's basically what the Tenryubito suit is, and it has an air filter because, God forbid, the world nobles, the gods among men, have to breathe the same air as the common folk. I mean, come on. What are you talking about? They actually wear these suits inside Marie Joie, the big giant mansion that they call home. And hey, it's even in the mansion, they still wear this crap. And oh yeah, when they do leave the mansion, they don't walk around like everybody else. No, 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 no. They have a ride. And you think, okay, well, what do they ride on? Do they ride on a horse or something? Well, I'm sure they have plenty of horses, fine steeds. But no, they ride on the backs of slaves. They make slaves get on their hands and knees and carry them on their backs, and then when one slave is like too tired to keep going, they friggin' have a new slave be brought in, and then they hop on their back and continue on. You see why the Revolutionary Army that Sabo is a part of wants to take them down. I think the Revolutionary Army sees potential in the rest of the world government, but the Tenryubito gotta go, and I wholeheartedly agree. Now, Sabo is special because he's not, I don't believe he's a part of any kind of royal family, but his family is well off. They are very wealthy. But Sabo didn't want that life. He wanted more freedom in his life, and so he ended up meeting Luffy and Luffy's kind of surrogate brother Ace. Ace was the person who had the powers of the Flare fruit, which is the fruit that Sabo now possesses the powers of. He possessed that before Sabo did. Now, it's interesting of how these three, Luffy, Ace, and Sabo, became surrogate siblings. They are not blood related at all. The three of them are not blood related, but they consider each other brothers because they became such good friends when they were children. And Sabo actually stole a bottle of sake, and I forget where he got it from. I think he might have stole it from his dad or something. I forget where he got it from, but he stole a bottle of sake. Now keep in mind, I don't think Luffy had his gum powers yet. And Luffy ate the gum fruit when he was like 7, maybe 8 years old, okay? And this, I don't think he had his gum powers yet. So him, Sabo, and Ace are like all under the age of 10, and they're drinking sake. And they're doing like this, basically this kind of toast ceremony, where like they say if we share this sake, divide it amongst the three of us, we share it in this little ceremony, it will bind us together for not just simply as friends, but as brothers. So they consider each other family. Now, sometime later, Sabo was caught up in an explosion, and while he did survive it, Luffy and Ace, I believe, believed that Sabo was dead. So for the longest, Luffy had thought that Ace was his only surviving brother. Turned out later that Sabo was not dead, obviously, because here he is in the flesh. So Luffy was glad to find out Sabo wasn't actually dead, but Sabo did lose his memory. And it wasn't until Sabo saw coverage of the Battle of Marineford, which was where Luffy and a bunch of his allies busted into Marineford. That's actually where I've conducted a majority of these Devil Fruit Down Low videos, is on the Marineford stage. And Marineford was like supposedly like the base of operations for all the Marines, so you can tell how heavily guarded an area that would be. But Luffy and the gang break in because they receive word that Ace has been captured by the next guy that I'm going to talk about in this series, Blackbeard, and he's been handed over to the Marines. Now, the reason why Ace is going to be executed is actually for several reasons. One, he's a pirate, and the world government says, basically death to all pirates, and the Marines, directly serve the world government. Two, Ace is the 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, who's headed up by their captain Edward Newgate, aka Whitebeard, who will be talked about more in Blackbeard's discussion. And third of all, Ace is the biological son of the previous king of the pirates, Goldie Roger. So basically, in an effort to completely wipe out Roger's legacy, that's another reason why they wanted to kill Ace, was to completely wipe out the Roger lineage. Now, the way Ace came to be in the situation that he was in was Ace, basically, Goldie Roger was never defeated. You would figure a guy named, with the title of King of the Pirates would have never been beaten, and he really wasn't. I'm sure he had some close calls, but he was never really defeated. We don't know too much about his history, but considering he was called King of the Pirates, I'm pretty sure he had a pretty good track record when it came to combat. He was never really defeated, or at least they never talk about him ever being defeated. But he did end up developing an incurable illness. There was no known cure for this disease, and he knew it was gonna kill him. And it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when. And so Roger's like, well, I'm gonna die anyway, so he decides to turn himself in to the Marines, and that's where he puts away all of his treasures and whatnot in the One Piece treasure that everybody's after. He hides his boat, the Oro Jackson, on an island called Rathbell. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Everybody wants the treasures and ship of the King of the Pirates, but he never really left, an actual explanation of how to find it. Obviously, he wants people to go on the adventure to find it. But after he was took in by the Marines, specifically he was watched over by Monkey D. Garp, who is Luffy's grandfather, because Roger and Garp had some history, kind of chasing each other around all the time. Roger had a discussion with Garp while he was in prison awaiting his execution, where he said, "Listen, Garp, you and I we've had the go around, and said one thing I've learned from all the time I've spent around you and with you is that you are a fairly honorable guy." So he says, "Let me talk to you right now, man to man. Right now I'm not a pirate and you're not a Marine. We're just two guys talking." And he says, "I consider you," basically he says, "I consider you an honorable person. Listen, I have a kid. I have a son. And, he's not very old right now. He's like a baby." He said, "Listen, due to the fact that he is my son, he will be targeted. The world government, as well as I do, the world government's going to want to get him, just because they want to wipe out all traces of me." And he said, "Now, I'm taking my punishment. I'm taking my punishment. Really, you guys are kind of doing me a favor. That disease was going to kill me slowly. You guys are going to do it fairly quickly. You guys are kind of doing me a favor. But, this kid, he's done nothing wrong. And he doesn't deserve to be tormented because of, just because of who his father happens to be. So could you please just do me this one favor, just man to man, not pirate to Marine, not legendary pirate king to, Garp was a vice admiral of the Marines at the time. It's just two men, just between two men. Could you please find and take care of my son, keep him out of harm's way?" So Garp is at first like, what the hell are you on about? I'm not gonna help you for nothing. But Garp is a fairly honorable guy. So he decides, okay, it's a man-to-man request. He says, I know if I get found out, I'm gonna be in trouble, but yeah. So he takes and he honors the request. So he takes to watching over Ace, and then, of course, he still has his marine duties to perform. So he leaves Luffy and Ace in the hands of a bandit leader named Dadam, something along those lines. I could never remember how to pronounce her name right. She's a bandit leader, and he knows that she's fairly capable, and he basically says, in exchange for me not taking you in, you watch over these two for me. Like, when I'm not around, you watch over these two. So, she's like, all right, I get it, because Garp is incredibly strong, so he could have easily crushed her and her whole bandit clan by himself fairly easily and then dragged them all to prison for the rest of their lives. But he's playing fast and loose with the rules for the sake of these two kids, to have somebody to basically babysit them while he's not around. And it's during this time that Luffy, Ace, and Sabo all meet and have that little ceremony. Well, sometime later, Ace goes off on his own, and he ends up creating his own pirate crew first, the Spade Pirates, and then the Spade Pirates end up getting absorbed by the Whitebeard Pirates, and, Ace becomes the second in command of the 2nd Division, because Whitebeard is what's called a Yonko, which means he's like one of the most powerful pirates in the world. So Yonko, with a few exceptions, Yonko usually have not just one simple ship, but like an entire fleet of ships at their disposal. Which I think Whitebeard had like 13 different divisions, so he had like 13 ships, or 13 like at least 13 different ships, if not 13 different fleets or something like that at his disposal. And Ace was the captain of the 2nd Division. Well, what led to Ace getting captured was Ace had found out that Blackbeard had killed a very good friend of his named Thatch, and so Ace made it his mission to track him down. I'm gonna take him down. It was a revenge thing, and they ended up having this huge epic battle. And due to the nature of Blackbeard's abilities, Ace sadly ended up losing. So Ace got took in to the Marines so that Blackbeard could have himself set up as what's called a warlord. Boa Hancock is also a warlord. They're basically legalized pirates. They technically work for the government. The government can order them to do certain things, and in exchange the more devious side of them is kind of ignored. Another guy I'll talk about later, Crocodile, he was also a warlord. The guy that trained Zoro, Dracula Mihawk, he's also a warlord. So he gets himself set up, and it's all because Blackbeard is always on the hunt for more and more power. He has like a specific goal in mind, and he's always out for gathering more power in the sake of getting this goal accomplished. And we don't really know a whole lot about Blackbeard, but I'll talk more about him in his video. Now, eventually, Whitebeard and the Whitebeard Pirates and Luffy and his allies, they all storm Marineford in an attempt to save Ace. They temporarily succeed in saving Ace, But then the powerful admirals, who are all, kind of some of the head honchos of the Marines, they all show up and they get involved in the battle, and they all have very powerful devil fruits that I'll talk about later on with their videos. But there's one guy whose name is Akainu, and Akainu has the power of the Magu Magu no Mi, or the Magma fruit. Now, you can imagine how powerful a fruit that is. So Luffy is powerless to fight against somebody as strong as Akainu. And so, Luffy doesn't have a hope in heck of beating him. And he's already been to hell and back due to the previous arc that took place in a place called Impel Down, which I'll explain when I explain the Devil Fruit abilities of Warden Magellan, because he's the head warden of Impel Down. I'll explain Impel Down because that's a freaking messed up place that deserves to be talked about. But Luffy doesn't stand a chance. It's rubber versus magma. It's not a very good matchup. So Ace, in a moment of self-sacrificing, proving that he really does love Luffy as a younger brother, he jumps in the way of Akainu's attack, and he tries to use his flare powers to try to block or absorb it, but in One Piece logic, okay, Ace is pure fire due to the nature of his powers, and Akainu is pure lava, and One Piece logic, lava beats fire. So lava is stronger than fire, so Akainu ends up punching a hole straight through Ace's back and out his chest. And he kind of dies being cradled by Luffy, who immediately goes into shock. Because, now, as far as Luffy knew, both of his surrogate brothers are now dead. Now, sometime later, after the time skip and everything, Luffy becomes aware that the Maramara no Mi, or the Flare fruit, the fruit that gave Ace all his fire powers, has reappeared. And it's actually being used as, the main trophy in a tournament. So Luffy dresses up in a disguise, because he's Mugiwara Luffy, he's Straw Hat Luffy, he's a very infamous pirate. And I believe it was revealed around that time to the world that, Luffy's not just an infamous pirate, his father is also Monkey D. Dragon, who is the head of the Revolutionary Army. And so it's kind of ironic, Luffy's not really never officially met his father, but Sabo works, very closely with him. So his surrogate brother talks with his dad more than he does. So, Ace had Goldie Roger, King of the Pirates, for a father. Luffy has Dragon, leader of the Revolutionary Army, for a father. So, they both come from some rather infamous lineages. And you talk about the apple falling far from the tree, Garp's a freaking admiral in the Marines, and his son becomes the freaking head of the Revolutionary Army trying to take down the government that the Marines work for. But I digress. Anyway, Sabo had lost his memory after that explosion, and it's during the time when he sees the news coverage of what happened at Marineford and with Ace and everything, and it jars his memory. It makes his memory come back. And at this point, he knows he needs to find Luffy. He wants to talk to him, let him know he's still alive and everything like that, reveal what the hell happened and where he's been and so on and so forth. And then he becomes aware of the tournament, and he knows that, Ace had the Flare fruit powers, and he's like hell, I'm gonna let anybody else take those powers that belong to my brother. You know, so Luffy and Sabo have this kind of same mentality of we're not gonna let anybody take the powers that belong to our brother. So Sabo goes there. He ends up meeting Luffy. He sees right through the disguise that Luffy has on, and reveals who he is. Yada yada yada. And after a bunch of battles and everything, Sabo convinces Luffy to let him put on the disguise because Sabo is built fairly similarly to Luffy, so he could pass for Luffy in that disguise, the Mera no Mi, and right in front of everybody, just like no shit's given, just freaking eats it. And immediately gains the powers of the Flare fruit. Now, obviously, you know, Luffy, you know, becomes aware that Sabo has these powers now, which I don't think Luffy cares, you know, because it's better, you know, Luffy already has a devil fruit power, and supposedly you're not supposed to be able to have more than one devil fruit power. Again, that's a Blackbeard thing we'll have to talk about. But, you know, Luffy, I think Luffy's happy with that arrangement, with Sabo now having this power. So, what does will formally give Ace and now give Sabo? Well, as you can see right here, there's the Flame Fist, which is basically just a concentrated ball of fire. Basically, the Mera no Mi, or the Flare fruit, is a Logia that lets its user turn into fire and control fire. And now, Ace had a bunch of different techniques. He had the Flare Fist, or the Flame Fist, which you see Sabo use here. You know, he had like that move. Sabo can also channel the flames through that pipe staff on his back for different effects. He has this move called the Dragon's Claw, and he can add flame effects to that as well. He also has, you know, like Dragon. Let me see if I can do it. Dragon's Breath, like that. Now, Sabo has yet to use. I don't think Sabo's used like the big coup de grace attack that Ace had, which was called Sun Emperor, which was basically just this gigantic, massive ball of fire. He controlled a small sun, just made of pure flame. That, like, you can tell just from looking at this thing that if this thing had hit something directly, it would have been like dropping the fire equivalent of a nuke onto something. And frickin', if I'm not mistaken, frickin' Ace tried to use this against Blackbeard. Now, if Blackbeard did not have the powers that he possessed, he would have been toast. Like, frickin' literally, he would have been toast. But I don't think Sabo's done that yet. But he does have this move right here. That is a move I believe Ace could do, and Sabo's picked it up too. Now, I don't think Sabo can't do the Sun Emperor. I just don't think he has done it yet. Also, keep in mind, you know, Ace had the power of the Mera no Mi for a few years prior to his death. So, yeah, he'd had some experience with it and learning how to use it. Sabo's fairly new at it. He's learning quickly, but he's still fairly new at using this power. But what other abilities does the Mera no Mi give Sabo? Well, like all Logia Devil Fruit users, because he can transform into his element, basically to explain it is, Sabo's body, the moment he ate the devil fruit, his body was basically magically transformed into living fire. Okay? Just as Luffy's body is now basically living rubber, Sabo's body is basically living fire. So like when you look at him here, he's basically solidified fire in the shape of a person. And he can turn fire is an elemental force. It's not tangible in the sense that, like, you know, you could just grab it. You know, you can try to touch fire, but you'll burn yourself. But like just like he has like he can turn into fire, and just like other Logias that turn into their element, once they turn into their element, it's like, you know, other than burning yourself, what do you think trying to punch fire is gonna do? It's gonna hurt you, but it's not gonna hurt fire. You know, it's just like there's a guy. I'll talk about him down the road. His name's Eneru, and he ate the I believe it's like the bolt fruit or something like that. Basically it gives him lightning powers and let him control and turn into electricity. Same idea. You know, what are you, if you try to punch electricity, you know, what's it gonna do besides shock you? And that's the same idea here across the board. All Logia Devil Fruit users can use that. Now, you know, this fruit is not without its limits. Obviously, a Kainu with his magma fruit is stronger, so if Sabo went into a fight against a Kainu, it might not end well for him. End well for Ace. But on top of that, Extreme could also, you know, limit the power of the Devil Fruit. Also, exposure to water, like, you know, water is still a weakness for all Devil Fruits. You know, being submerged in water is still a weakness that all Devil Fruit users have. And also, you know, if you could get enough water, you might be able to, you know, extinguish the flames, preventing Sabo from really being able to use his powers. And then one weakness in particular that all Logia Devil Fruit users have is that they are extremely vulnerable to armament hockey. I think they could probably be affected by pretty much every form of hockey, but it's particularly armament hockey. Because remember, you use armament hockey, it's basically like putting like some psychic armor onto your body, and it increases your defense and whatnot. And due to the nature of this power, it's something that can still hit somebody who has a Logia Devil Fruit power. So, like, you know, if, you know, okay, for an instance, Luffy has armament, and Sabo has a Logia Devil Fruit. Now, not that the two would ever actually fight, but like if they were to spar or something, and Sabo, you know, kept turning himself into, you know, just pure fire, Luffy could easily overcome that by just coating his arms in hockey, and then there's some kind of effect. Somehow, the power of hockey can, like, turn off that basically damage immunity ability that all Logias have. You know, that whole turn into your element and gain damage immunity ability, it turns it off. So like the minute that Luffy's, you know, hockey covered fist would connect with Sabo's flames, it would like immediately condense those flames back down into Sabo's solid body, and then he would still take the impact the same as he normally would. So, you know, that's the limits of the Flare fruit. It's the first fire and heat-based Devil Fruit that we get. It's not the strongest one of the bunch. It's implied that the magma fruit is the strongest of it. Extreme cold and water could be used to defeat it, but still, if you can turn into and control fire, you're basically... Sabo is basically the One Piece equivalent of the Human Torch. Alright? So, just imagine that. You know, you have this unlimited access to the power of fire. Alright, and honestly, if there was one devil fruit that I could pick, it might be this one. There's a few of them I could think of that I wouldn't mind having the powers of, and this is definitely on the list. But that's Sabo, that's the Flare fruit. We haven't seen Sabo all that much, so there's still more to learn about him. We haven't actually seen everything that the Flare fruit can do, because, you know, Ace, he didn't really show up that much in the story. We didn't get to see everything that the Flare fruit could do from him, what he came up with, and Sabo's still learning, so we haven't seen everything that he can do with it. So this is a continually evolving thing, and who knows, maybe one day Sabo will figure out how to make the Flare fruit stronger than the Magma fruit, and he'll be the one to beat Akainu. That would be definitely interesting to see. But anyway, that will do it for the Devil Fruit download on Sabo and the Flare fruit, the Maramara no Mi. Next up, we have, finally, Blackbeard. Brace yourselves for this one. There's a lot to talk about.